Broadcast from our studios here in the National Capital Region. Over the course of the next 50-odd minutes, we're going to take you through all the top global developments that you must be aware of in today's time. But our top focus is certainly going to be what's happened in the United States. Donald Trump dancing his way back to the Oval Office in the White House. How is Donald Trump now going to reshape the world once the dust settles? The Republican administration, how will that shape up? Who's going to be the who's who? Who all are going to be the top faces making their way into the White House? And on the domestic front and on the foreign policy front, what are going to be some of the first moves of the 47th US president? As Donald Trump appears set to return to the White House in 2025, his administration is expected to reshape major aspects of the United States' policy, including foreign relations, trade, climate change, you name it. And on the campaign trail, Donald Trump has made it quite clear he wants the United States to disengage from what he calls unfair alliances and partnerships. He has often stated that allies have benefited too much from American military support without reciprocating on trade. He's pledging to change that particular dynamic, emphasizing an America First approach that could lead to significant disruptions in global alliances. Now, Donald Trump's trade policy is also expected to get even tougher this time around. In his previous term, he imposed tariffs on the EU steel and aluminium exports, and now he's proposing a 10% tariff on all US imports and a staggering 60% on Chinese products. Mexico could also see a 25% tariff on its exports to the United States, which could affect sectors like semiconductors, autos, and clean energy. Investors are bracing for volatility, anticipating higher inflation driven by these protectionist measures by Donald Trump 2.0. 10% tariff on all US imports, 60% tariff on Chinese imports, 25% tariffs on Mexican imports. China remains a central focus of Trump's foreign policy. In his first term, he had labeled China a strategic competitor and imposed tariffs ranging from 7.5% to 25% on Chinese goods. Now, the proposed 60% tariff on Chinese products signals a much tougher stance. Trump labels China a strategic competitor, 60% tariff proposed on Chinese goods. On Iran, on the other hand, Trump took a hard line by withdrawing from 2015 nuclear deal and reimposing sanctions, which heavily impacted Iran's economy. In a second term, analysts expect Donald Trump to double down, possibly frightening sanctions further on Iran's oil industry and empowering allies like Israel. Possible stricter sanctions on Iran's oil sector and the potential support for Israel against nuclear sites is what one is talking about. The Ukrainian war and relations with Europe are likely to face changes as well. Donald Trump has signaled opposition to the current levels of US support for Kyiv, hinting at a desire for a peace deal that might require Ukraine to make territorial concessions. His critics argue that this could leave Europe with higher defense costs and increased security concerns. Climate change, ladies and gentlemen, is also going to be a top-notch point. Climate change policy will also see a shift. Donald Trump plans to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accords once more and is expected to promote nuclear energy. Additionally, he may roll back the Biden-era policies on electric vehicles and emission reductions. Donald Trump is going to now exit the Paris Climate Agreement and increase his support for nuclear energy, rollback of all of Joe Biden's EV and emission policies. All in all, Donald Trump's anticipated return to the presidency could bring sweeping changes for United States' domestic and foreign policy, marking a decisive shift towards protectionism and unilateralism.
While campaigning to regain the US presidency, Donald Trump said that he would be able to end Russia's war in Ukraine in 24 hours.
And it will take me no longer than one day.
He warned that Israel would be, quote, eradicated if he lost the election.
And you can't let that happen.
And he vowed sweeping new tariffs on Chinese imports.
I'm going to put tariffs on other countries.
What does his US election victory mean in a turbulent world? Trump's response to Russia's war in Ukraine could set the tone for his agenda. Under President Joe Biden, the US poured in tens of billions of dollars in military and financial aid. Trump criticized the level of US support for Ukraine's war effort and promised to end the conflict before he takes office in January. But he didn't explain how. Political analyst Volodymyr Fesenko says Trump is likely to push for swift talks to end the war. But he says some concessions will be made, as Trump wants a quick result. NATO, which backs Ukraine, is also under threat. Trump had warned that he would not only refuse to defend nations, quote, delinquent on funding, but would encourage Russia to do, quote, whatever the hell they want to them. Trump will also confront a volatile Middle East that threatens to descend into a broader regional conflict. Israel is fighting wars in Gaza and Lebanon while facing off against Iran. Trump is expected to continue arming Israel. His policy toward Israel will likely have no strings attached for humanitarian concerns.
I'm sure Netanyahu is pleased to see Trump rather than Harris heading for the White House.
Bronwyn Maddox is the director of the Chatham House think tank.
Trump could make this better, or he could make it an awful lot worse.
Trump pledges to impose a tough stance on China, meaning he would ramp up tariffs on Chinese goods.
I believe that Trump's threat of 60% tariffs will likely happen.
Han Shenlin is the China country director at the Asia Group.
As far as China's exports are concerned, by far the largest market is US and Europe. And so they don't necessarily want to fight a two-front war in that trade space.
On the other side, Trump has presented a mixed message. He described Chinese President Xi Jinping as, quote, brilliant for ruling with an iron fist, and said democratically governed Taiwan, which China claims as its territory, should pay the US for defense. Another unknown is how Trump will craft his national security team. Many critics believe he will avoid bringing in mainstream Republicans who sometimes acted as guardrails in his first term.
Well, the security team, we don't know much about right now. But here's a quick look at who's going to be part of this high-ranking administrating cabinet of Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump will begin the process of choosing a cabinet and selecting these other high-ranking administration officials in the coming weeks following his presidential election victory. And here are the top contenders for some of those key posts overseeing defense, intelligence, diplomacy, trade, immigration, and economic policy making, the backbone of Trump 2.0 dispensation. Now, Besant, a key economic advisor to Donald Trump, is widely seen as a top candidate for a Treasury Secretary's post. A longtime hedge fund investor who taught at Yale University for several years, Besant has a warm relationship with the president-elect. Of course, let's also take a look at Richard Grenell. Now, Grenell is among Trump's closest foreign policy advisors. During the president-elect's first four-year term, he served as acting director of national intelligence and U.S. ambassador to Germany. When Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in September, Grenell sat in on that private meeting. Let's also take a look at Robert O'Brien. Robert O'Brien, Trump's fourth and final national security advisor during his first term, maintains a close relationship with Donald Trump nonetheless, and the two often speak on national security matters. He is likely in the running for Secretary of State or other top foreign policy and national security posts. Mike Waltz is another big name, ladies and gentlemen. A former Army Green Beret who is currently a U.S. congressman from Florida. Waltz has established himself as one of the foremost China hawks in the House of Representatives. Now, Waltz is on speaking terms with Donald Trump and is widely considered to be a serious contender for Secretary of Defense. John Radcliffe, up next. Take a look. A former congressman himself and prosecutor who served as Director of National Intelligence during Trump's last year in office. John Radcliffe is seen as a potential Attorney General, though he could also take a separate national security or intelligence position. We'll have to wait and find out. The president-elect's allies view Radcliffe as a hardcore Trump loyalist who could likely win Senate confirmation as well. Kash Patel, ladies and gentlemen, a former Republican House staffer who served in various high-ranking staff roles in the defense and intelligence communities during Trump's first term. Patel has frequently appeared on the campaign trail to rally support for the candidate. Some Trump allies would like to see Patel considered the ultimate Trump loyalist, appointed CIA director. And here's a report on why Donald Trump will face far fewer limits on his power when he is sworn in once more as U.S. President in January 2025, returning to Washington as the head of the Republican Party that has been remade in his image over the last 8 years. Take a look.
America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate.
When Donald Trump is sworn in as U.S. president for the second time in January, he will face far fewer limits on his power. Some of the guardrails Trump encountered during his first presidency no longer exist, says Reuters correspondent Andy Sullivan.
Trump has a lot more allies on Capitol Hill. think the independent-minded senators, people like John McCain, who gave him so much trouble first time around, they're largely gone. They've been replaced by lawmakers who owe their careers to Donald Trump. They're much more willing to do what he wants.
We have a country that needs help.
That means Trump will have an easier time getting conservative judges and other government personnel appointed. And then there's the U.S. Supreme Court. Sullivan says the country's top court has already handed Trump important victories.
They've given him what basically amounts to a blank check by saying back in June that presidents can't be held criminally liable for actions they take in office. This will have the practical effect of getting rid of 2 of his criminal prosecutions, and also going forward gives him a lot more latitude to do stuff that would be illegal. For example, calling in troops to get deployed on U.S. soil. That's against the law, but he can't be prosecuted for that at this point.
Republicans also won control of the Senate on November 5th, but Trump still faces one possible constraint: the House. If Republicans ultimately prevail, they would be in a position to dictate the agenda in Washington, helping Trump deliver on his promises to slash taxes and restrict immigration. The Brookings Institution's Bill Galston says Trump could have a unified government for at least 2 years.
The Trump administration will be able to pursue its agenda, whatever that turns out to be, with fewer political constraints than most presidents labor under.
If the House ultimately goes to the Democrats, they would be able to block Trump's legislative agenda and launch investigations into his administration.
Now, what's interesting is that Donald Trump, during his campaign trail, has said it time and again that he is going to be back. He's going to be back for revenge. He's going to start prosecuting his rivals as well. And as Donald Trump prepares to step back into the White House, the president-elect has vowed to investigate or prosecute political rivals, left-wing Americans, and those who defy him. Here's a report with a detailed list. Who else is in Trump's list of prosecution? Take a look.
America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate.
With his return to the White House now secured, US President-elect Donald Trump has a list of people he says he wants to prosecute or investigate. They include political rivals, left-wing Americans, and tech giants. So who could Trump target? Trump has called for investigations into Vice President Kamala Harris, President Joe Biden, former President Barack Obama, and former Republican US Representative Liz Cheney. At a September rally, Trump said Harris was responsible for the biggest crime story of our time, referring to illegal border crossings.
She should be impeached and prosecuted for her actions.
He has also posted online calling for military tribunals for Cheney and Obama. Following pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses across the US this year, Trump told Fox News anyone who desecrates the American flag should get a 1-year jail sentence. He also said he would ban refugee resettlements from, quote, terror-infested areas such as Gaza and arrest pro-Hamas thugs who engage in vandalism, an apparent reference to the college student protesters. Trump has also warned Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg and Google over what he says is potential election interference on their platforms. He's accused Zuckerberg's Meta of suppressing content that would have hurt Biden in the 2020 election, while Trump has also threatened to instruct the Department of Justice to criminally investigate Google for only displaying bad stories about him.
This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt.
Trump and his allies have called for prosecuting, firing, or jailing prosecutors who defy him or have investigated him. In an April interview with Time, he said if US attorneys refused orders to prosecute someone, he would be open to firing them.
Today, an indictment was unsealed.
He also says he would fire the federal prosecutor who is leading current criminal probes against him.
Well, now let's also talk about Kamala Harris, U.S. Vice President. She conceded the election to President-elect Donald Trump at her alma mater, Howard University, historically black college, Howard University in Washington, D.C., saying, "While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign." Listen in.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people. A fight for the ideals at the heart of our nation, the ideals that reflect America at our best. That is a fight I will never give up. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before.
But then again, in the aftermath of Vice President Kamala Harris's sweeping loss to Donald Trump in the 2024 election, experts have said that Harris has been dealt an especially difficult hand amid lingering inflation and low approval ratings for President Joe Biden, who gave up a chance at re-election to clear the way for Kamala Harris. Here's experts discussing why Kamala Harris got trumped.
Well, the big thing to point to, and I think there's going to be a lot of introspection and finger pointing among Democrats, is how they went about selecting their nominee. It was not conventional, to say the least, to stand behind effectively an uncontested primary season behind an incumbent president who then you abandon at the final hour and replace with the vice president who was the natural pick in some ways, but there wasn't so much as a moment of introspection between him stepping down and the party rallying behind her, even though in 2020 she ran what was widely regarded as a lackluster campaign. And it isn't clear what her core kind of base of supporters, what it looks like. And I think there'll be a lot of, as I said, a lot of finger pointing about not just towards people, but also towards process. Just how was this allowed to happen?
I think in retrospect, one of her biggest challenges wasn't about her. It was about the fact from the start you were running a candidate who was tied to a deeply unpopular administration. And once you see that, and that made it hard for her to position herself as the candidate of change, you will ask what made him unpopular. And why were his economic policies doing poorly, and immigration policies, even when there's metrics that show he's quite successful. So I think that conversation is going to happen. And then there's also going to be the conversation of why didn't he open the door earlier on to primaries, caucuses, or even her running by just running, governing for one term and being cognizant of his own limitations with age. All of that conversation is definitely coming, and it will impact his legacy. I think a president who did a lot will be also remembered for a president who was part of opening the door to what many Democrats consider a pretty radical conservative regime.
Well, time for us to slip into a quick commercial breather here. Top developments right on the other side. Keep watching News 9.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe. B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
Welcome back. Disappointment, reflection, and a hint of optimism surrounded Kamala Harris's supporters on Wednesday as they awaited her concession speech at Howard University. A supporter from Miami expressed deep concerns about the global implications of the election, whilst a 20-year-old communications major emphasized the importance of unity and resilience, particularly amongst women. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris delivered that concession speech to the nation on Wednesday after a whirlwind campaign that failed to stop Republican Donald Trump's return to the White House.
Oh man, it's the millions of people who will suffer directly and indirectly because of his policy decisions or lack of policy decisions here in the United States and around the world. This morning I was just thinking about the soldiers in Ukraine, how they must be feeling that there's a good chance now they may lose this war without the support of America, that their sovereign nation might be overtaken by a dictator next door. And who knows what happens after that, and just, everyone here in this country who just wanted to turn the page on that ugliness and that divisiveness. I feel so sorry for us as a country. It's heartbreaking, but, I hope America endures.
I heard people who are very disappointed, like crying and all of the above. So, for them it is a tough time. And I mean, granted, it's a tough time for the entire campus as a whole. But I think for us as women, it's all about just sticking together and making sure that we continue to fight for our rights and do what we can as individuals. And we don't know exactly what these next 4 years will look like, but I'm a woman of faith. I believe in God, and we're just going to trust and keep praying and hoping and believing that, things are going to turn out, for what's best. I do believe that everything happens for a reason, so I'm just kind of taking it day by day.
I just hope we get more savvy because we don't have a worthy president coming up. It's crushing. I'm from New York. I've known this guy a long time. It's crushing to see him back in this situation. I honestly don't recognize my country.
I was important, and I did, and I really did think she was going to win. But I'm really, sad that she didn't. But I do believe that just her running alone is already powerful enough. It's very motivating. Even though I want to do medicine, I still believe that with her running, it will help me when I become a neurosurgeon and wanting to push these boundaries.
But here's another interesting aspect that came to the fore in this election. Starr County in South Texas, the most Hispanic county in the United States. It flipped red for the first time in over a century, electing Donald Trump. As of Wednesday, Trump led Kamala Harris 58% to 42% in that particular county, where more than 95% of the residents identify as Hispanic or Latino, according to the 2020 census. And this historic shift highlights the changing political landscape in one of the nation's most diverse regions.
The most Hispanic county in the United States flipped red to elect Donald Trump on Tuesday. It's the first time Starr County in South Texas has elected a Republican presidential candidate in more than a century. As of Wednesday, Trump was up over his opponent Kamala Harris 58 to 42% in the county, where more than 97% of the population identifies as Hispanic or Latino, according to the 2020 U.S. Census. 61-year-old Patricio Sainz Jr. is a Trump supporter and maintenance worker here. He says Harris and the Democrats overplayed their hand with Latino voters.
I think they took the Latino vote for granted,
and they saw through her lies. She got caught too many times lying.
Saenz did not elaborate on what he thought Harris had lied about, but he said his support for Trump has also been fueled by concerns about the economy and inflation.
And people have woken up, you know. I said we go to H-E-B and we came by a fajita for $2.99 when Trump was there, as opposed now it's anywhere between $8.99 to $10.99. And recently we've been buying and doing the barbecues with nothing but chicken. So we're going to be flying, growing feathers out of our hairs and our ears, because that's all we've been eating is chicken.
Saenz celebrated election night at a building in downtown Rio Grande City. Saenz' friend Ross Barrera holds local Republican meetings here. The retired military veteran explained Trump's appeal to his community.
He's very frank. He's not a politician that tells you what you want to hear. Yeah, he's a little bit off base, but guess what? We're not voting for a Jesus Christ. We're not voting for somebody that's a sainthood. There doesn't exist. The guy has his flaws. He's human. He's made some mistakes, but we like the idea that he's a business guy.
For the past 2 months, Barrera and other Republicans have organized so-called Trump trains, or caravans of vehicles parading through the streets in support of their candidate. Professional photographer Roel Reyes took part.
I would say out of 50 cars that hung at us, we'll probably get one or two that negative reaction. All the rest are, thumbs up, positive reaction. So that's when we saw that, we knew that we were going to get a red county this time. So yeah.
Starr County is located in the Rio Grande Valley near the U.S.-Mexico border. Reyes says another reason he chose to support Trump was due to concerns about border security.
The river's about half a mile down the road, and we see people, crossing all over the place, and that worries us, because sometimes we have to be on the lookout at home. Sometimes you don't even feel safe, because of the people that are crossing. I've had people go through my yard,
Trump's success in Starr County underscores the boost he received from Latino voters across the country. Compared to the 2020 election, Trump scored a 14 percentage point increase in his share of Hispanic voters nationally, according to an exit poll conducted by Edison Research.
Well, so a Texas county century-old streak broken, but at least 200 people had gathered outside the Trump International Hotel and Tower in Chicago to protest Donald Trump's re-election as President of the United States. The video posted on social media showed protesters holding a banner reading, "End the Trump era."
You will see! Palestine will be free! Donald Trump, you will... Donald Trump, you will see! Palestine will be free! Donald Trump, you will... Donald Trump, you will see! Palestine will be free!
But hey, even as the protests go on, Donald Trump's U.S. presidential election victory will essentially end criminal cases brought against him, at least for the 4 years he is going to occupy the Oval Office.
For much of this year, Donald Trump has faced 4 simultaneous prosecutions over allegations ranging from trying to cover up a hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels to attempting to overturn his 2020 election defeat. He pleaded not guilty to all charges and cast the prosecutions as politically motivated. So what happens now that he's won the US election? Trump faced 4 charges in federal court in Washington. He was accused of spreading false claims of election fraud to try to block the collection and certification of votes following the 2020 election. He was also charged with unlawfully holding onto classified documents after his first term ended in 2021, and obstructing efforts by the US government to retrieve the records.
Is one of the most outrageous and vicious legal theories ever put forward in an American court of law.
However, all charges were dismissed in July after US Special Counsel Jack Smith, who led the federal prosecutions in that case, was found to have been improperly appointed to the role and did not have the authority to bring the case. Smith's team is appealing to the ruling, but Trump's vow to fire Smith immediately upon taking office likely signals the end of the case. In May, a New York jury found Trump guilty of falsifying business records tied to the Daniels payment. That makes him the first former U.S. president convicted of a felony. His sentencing is currently scheduled for November 26, before he's sworn in. Trump's lawyers are expected to ask Justice Juan Merchan to delay the sentencing, in which he could face up to 4 years in prison. Merchan has already twice postponed Trump's sentencing. That was in part due to a July U.S. Supreme Court ruling finding that presidents have broad immunity from prosecution over their official acts. Based on the ruling, Trump argues the case should be dismissed. He has vowed to appeal his conviction once he's sentenced. Separately, his lawyers have asked the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals to move the case to federal court. Such a move, if successful, could create new legal obstacles for the case. Last year, prosecutors in Georgia's Fulton County used state racketeering laws to charge Trump in an alleged conspiracy to reverse his defeat in the 2020 election.
The election was a rigged election, a stolen election.
Trump will not be able to end the prosecution, but his lawyer will seek to pause any activity related to him. They will argue that a president should not face the burden of a criminal prosecution while in office. Legal experts expect that the case against Trump will not progress while he remains in the White House. All in all, his U.S. presidential election victory essentially ends the criminal cases brought against him, that is, at least during his term in office.
Superstar Elon Musk. At least that's what Donald Trump named the tech billionaire and MAGA supporter. Elon Musk's influence on the Trump administration is expected to be significant at a time when the world's richest man already holds considerable power owing to his role as a major contractor with the U.S. Department of Defense through his ownership of the Starlink satellite broadband system and as CEO of Tesla.
The world saw their relationship blossom during the U.S. presidential race, with public support,
Take over, Elijah. Take over.
chats on social media, and $1 million giveaways. And now, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, stands to benefit greatly from his ties to President-elect Donald Trump.
Fight, fight, fight. Vote, vote, vote.
That's after federal disclosures showed Musk gave over $100 million to his pro-Trump spending group. Trump loaded Musk with praise early Wednesday morning during his victory speech.
Let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon. But he's a character, he's a special guy, he's a super genius. We have to protect our geniuses. We don't have that many of them.
Trump has said he would pick Musk to lead a new government efficiency commission to cut federal spending. The Tesla CEO has said at least $2 trillion could be cut from the $6.75 trillion federal budget. How that works could be key to the Trump administration. Musk has been a vocal critic of federal review of his SpaceX rocket business. His influence could mean less federal oversight of not only space exploration, but other new technologies Musk has a huge stake in, like EVs. Musk also wants to speed up approval of his autonomous driving technology. But Trump and Musk aren't completely in sync. Trump has said he will not let California require all vehicles in the state go electric in a decade. Musk is a big proponent of carbon-free energy, with Tesla being a major supplier of solar systems and batteries. Trump has promised to kill the offshore wind industry and rescind all unspent funds under the Inflation Reduction Act, President Joe Biden's signature climate law that Musk has benefited from. Republican-dominated states have seen big gains from the law. Musk is building his second U.S. electric vehicle factory in Texas.
All right then, time for another quick commercial breather here. But on the other side, Australia's big move to protect children online. We've got Jitin Jain, media and a cybersecurity expert waiting for us right on the other side. Keep watching News9.
Look what happened. Is this crazy? Fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day I will be fighting for you. And I believe the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond.
Cooking is an act of law. The first act of law we receive from our mothers in the families.
Modern Indian food is all about contemporary and innovative approach to traditional Indian cooking.
Representation it's also important, no?
I want to wear this white coat every day and then be a chef.
There are stories. If the name of whiskey is Ingrid, then there is a whole story behind that.
Cooking food is like a therapy, and eating one is like a pleasure I can give it to myself.
With Lounge Nights, I'm on a journey to celebrate and recognize the best food and nightlife establishments in various cities across India.
Radical presents Lounge Nights every Saturday and Sunday only on News9 Live.
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe. B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
Welcome back. Australia is taking a bold step to protect their kids online. The government has just unveiled legislation to restrict social media access to kids under the age of 16. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese made it clear, saying social media is doing harm to our kids and I'm calling time on it. The new law will be introduced later this month, and if it passes, social media giants like X, TikTok, Instagram and Facebook will have a year to figure out how to enforce it. The responsibility falls on these platforms to block access with no penalties for parents or young people who try to access these sites. This move comes amid global concerns over young people's online safety. And Anthony Albanese pointed out that parents and families everywhere are worried about what kids encounter online. But reactions are mixed. While some groups support the move, others argue that banning social media access outright isn't the answer. Critics, including mental health advocates, worry that it might push young people's social media into and the entire use of social media into hiding, limiting the support many of them seek online, which is available as well. Still, Anthony Albanese is confident that the proposed law balances protection with practicality, and the opposition has signaled their general support for it. Social media companies now have the task of finding ways to keep younger users off their platforms while staying in line with Australia's new standards.
Now, government's proposed age is 16.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said on Thursday that his government would ban social media for children under the age of 16. The country is testing an age check system to block kids from social media, with the ban possible by next year. Albanese highlighted the dangers to children, including harmful depictions of body image and misogynist content aimed at boys. The law will be introduced this year and take effect 12 months after approval. There will be no exceptions for children with parental consent or existing accounts. He added that social media platforms must prove they're blocking underage access.
The onus will be on social media platforms to demonstrate they are taking reasonable steps to prevent access. The onus won't be on parents or young people. There will be no penalties for users.
Communications Minister Michelle Rowland said the rules would apply to platforms like Meta, Instagram, TikTok, and X. YouTube would probably be included too. None of the companies could be reached for comment right away. Many countries plan to limit children's social media use, but Australia's policy is one of the strictest. France proposed banning social media for people under 15, but allowed exceptions with parental consent. The US has required parental consent for children under 13, causing most social media platforms to ban those under that age.
Well, now for a quick chat on this, cybersecurity expert Jitin Jain joins us on the broadcast here. Jitin, a very warm welcome to you. Now, firstly, given the rising concerns about social media's mental health impact on these young users, how essential is this step in protecting them, or could an alternative solution be more effective here?
I think this is a path-breaking step in order to safeguard our children from mental health issues, saving them from pedophiles, saving them from this inferiority complexion when they see the photos of others. Because, grass is always greener on the other side. Everybody's social media photos, what we see when they're traveling in their good of moments, we think life is like that with 100% happiness. The social media depicts an alternate side, which is not a reality. And children often think that, it's only our life which is in so much of a seesaw mode, and others are having a perfectly gala time. And then they develop mental health issues. Some people think that they're not able to travel like their friends are. Some people, start talking to strangers. Sometimes there is a overexposure of obscene images or accidental exposure of obscene images. Then there is cyberbullying, and it's a problem of all sort of things, and without any remedy to seek any help. Now, could this be the best solution by restricting the social media usage of children below 16? I think this is one of the best steps. The alternate could be that you use restrict usage to half an hour or 1 hour, maybe, time limit, so that there are no addiction issues. Or to fight with the issues of cyberbullying or overexposure or depiction, you could in a way go for an age classification strategy where children are able to access only curated content, restricted content. They're only able to befriend known people, families and friends, not unknown strangers. They are only able to access content which should be ideally, available to a kid who's, in their teenage. So I think till those other alternatives, which are reasonably deployable and technologically possible, are found.
This age-curated content is actually a great shout when you're talking about alternatives. But, the critics are also worried. They fear that the entire social media is going to be driven underground. Is that actually a concern that one needs to look at as well?
No, that could be, because people will start claiming that I'm 18. And that's the easy way, because right now also many of the platforms, including Twitter, social, Facebook, Instagram, they all say that we don't allow users below 14. But you will find 12 or 13-year-old kids who are on Instagram and Facebook, because they lie about their age by simply just, selecting a different column or number in the age. That is why the Australian Prime Minister is insisting that the onus will be on social media companies to ensure and prove they are reasonably deploying every tech possible for the age classification and deployment. Now, this is not the first time Australia is, taking a different turn in tech regulation. This is the same country which banned, Google and Twitter from the monetization of news. They said that you have to share revenue with the mainstream media companies who actually create news and, write articles. You just can't be copying their articles from Google search and making all ad revenues. You are out to share with them. Otherwise, they'll shut down. So Australia has always been there, and they face a massive onslaught and threats from Google by running massive misinformation campaign and ads driven by Google about censorship in Australia. Australia has been now becoming a world leader in terms of tech regulation, and in terms of child safety. I think there's much more to learn.
Well, so if this world leader, like you're pointing out, Jitin, if this world leader, all right, how significant of a global precedent could this world leader's legislation set if passed? And do you foresee other countries adopting similar age-curated content and restrictions as well?
Of course, I mean, Australia is one of the best democracies in the world. There have been talks across the world about the age classification and restricted content on Netflix, on OTT platforms. There have been debates about the gender safety and the child safety on dating platforms. How do you, I mean, social media is not only Facebook, it's Instagram, it's so many dating sites, it's Bumble, it's LinkedIn. So let us not restrict social media into this glass and prism of Instagram and Facebook. It's Twitter also, where people are exposed to political conversations, hate speech. Bullying and racism, inferiority complexion, addictions is one part of the problem. Cyberbullying, cyber crimes, addiction are different part of world, and there are no solutions to it. So till that time, as you rightly said, Kabir, till the time you find a better suitable alternative, probably this is the only option available. And since this is the only option available, somebody had to ring the, build the cat among pigeons, and Australia has done it. Now, you tell me how many shows your channel has had on the, on social media and the problem with the kids which you are facing. People in India have been playing PUBG for 8 hours, 9 hours.
You're right.
10 hours.
The Prime Minister has been talking so highly about digital arrests as well. And you've raised pertinent points over here. I think the age-curated alternative is the best step forward. But this is going to create challenges nonetheless for these social media intermediaries as well. And, rightly so. It's their problem. They've got to deal with it, Jitin. And at this point in time, when we spend so much of our time online, I mean, to look at on both the Libra scales, you've got somebody who's, probably been sextorted online. On the other hand, you've got somebody who's probably pulled his family from below the poverty line because, of the ability to exponentially grow on social media. Yeah.
This logic by these liberal lobbies and social media companies through paid media, that social media is being used to see some mental help and this helplines. I mean, if your Instagram and Facebook accounts get hacked today, these companies don't even respond. They don't even have a number you can call up. What sort of help they're talking?
Well,
जो account hack हो जाए उसको तो भी phone उठाने वाला है नहीं, and you're talking about other helplines. Bullshit.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We've lost so much of money. I think
if you're making 400 billion out of these children and people, then you ought to deploy at least 40 billion in their safety.
Wow, those are certainly some big numbers, ladies and gentlemen. Jitin Jain, cybersecurity expert. Many thanks, Jitin, for joining with us and helping us out on this crucial aspect. We'll have to wait. Later this month is when Australia will table that particular legislation. And if it does pass, it's going to be a big precedent for the rest of the world. But we've got another crucial update coming out of Australia because in an unexpected twist, India is calling out Canada over its latest move to block an Australian media outlet. This comes after Australia today aired a press conference featuring India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar alongside his Australian counterpart Penny Wong. According to India's External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal, Canada blocked the social media pages and handles of Australia today soon after the conference aired. Jaiswal expressed surprise, saying it smacked of hypocrisy towards freedom of speech. He added that this action raises questions, especially given the importance of Australia today to the Indian diaspora. And during his media interactions in Australia, Dr. Jaishankar, India's External Affairs Minister, highlighted three critical issues concerning India-Canada relations. First, he pointed out that Canada has repeatedly made allegations against India without providing specific evidence. Second, he mentioned the surveillance of Indian diplomats in Canada, which he called unacceptable. And finally, Jaishankar raised concerns about the space given in Canada to anti-India elements. Jaiswal left the matter open for interpretation, but the message was clear.
Canada blocking or banning Australia, the prominent outlet there, Australia Today. Yes, you have heard it correctly. We've also seen that we understand that the social media handles and pages of this particular outlet, which is an important diaspora outlet, has been blocked and are not available for viewers in Canada. This happened just a few hours after this particular handle carried the press conference of External Affairs Minister along with Penny Wong. And the particular media outlet also had several articles on the visit of the External Affairs Minister, as also an interview of External Affairs Minister. So we were surprised. It looks strange to us, but nonetheless, what I will say that these are actions which yet again highlight the hypocrisy of Canada towards freedom of speech. You would have seen that EM in his media engagements interaction, he spoke about three things. One was Canada making allegations and a pattern has developed without any specific evidence. Second thing he highlighted was that surveillance of Indian diplomats have been happening in Canada, which he termed as unacceptable. And then third thing which he highlighted was the political space which is being given in Canada to anti-India elements. So you can draw your conclusions from that why the Australia Today channel was blocked by Canada.
Well, from Australia and Canada, shifting our focus to Germany, because after the collapse of the coalition government in Germany, President Frank-Walter Steinmeier on Thursday said that he was prepared to dissolve the parliament and clear the way for new elections. However, he called on political leaders to act responsibly and prioritize national stability. The coalition government, led by Chancellor Olaf Scholz, collapsed Wednesday evening amid escalating tensions with the coalition partner, the Liberal Free Democratic Party, the FDP, over economic policies. Meanwhile, Olaf Scholz has said that he would submit a confidence vote in the parliament. Earlier, Olaf Scholz removed Finance Minister Christian Lindner from his cabinet, accusing the FDP leader of being untrustworthy. And only after a lost confidence vote does Steinmeier have the power to call a new election.
Der Bundeskanzler hat erklärt, im Bundestag die Vertrauensfrage zu stellen. Es ist der Weg, über den das Parlament den Weg zu Neuwahlen möglich machen kann. Der Bundespräsident muss über die Auflösung des Bundestages entscheiden. Wenn der Bundestag dem Bundeskanzler im Verfahren nach Artikel 68 Grundgesetz das Vertrauen entzieht, zu dieser Entscheidung stehe ich bereit.
Well, time for us to slip into a quick commercial breather here. Top developments right on the other side. Keep watching News 9.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. Dr. Rameshwar Rao Jupalli, founder, chairman of My Home Industries Private Limited, and his son Jupalli Ramu Rao, executive vice chairman, met with Prime Minister Narendra Modi at his residence today. During their visit, the duo presented the Prime Minister with a shawl as a mark of felicitation that symbolizes both respect and gratitude. They also gifted the Prime Minister an idol of Lord Venkateshwara, known to stand for goodness and annihilation of evil. Prime Minister Modi is widely recognized for his profound spiritual values and a strong commitment to benevolence, which influence his leadership style and dedication to public service. Prime Minister's outlook on equality has shaped his vision of India. Reflecting this very sentiment, Prime Minister Modi had inaugurated the Statue of Equality in Hyderabad back in 2022. The statue was conceptualized by Swami Chinnajiyar to honor the 11th century Bhakti saint Sri Ramanujacharya. Prime Minister's values have shaped the very idea of India, which is a balance of personal humility and a desire to uplift others, guided by principles of compassion and service. Addressing a historic summit in New York recently, the Prime Minister had said the highest priority must be accorded to a human-centric approach. And with that, it's a wrap on this segment of Top Stories. Lots more right on the other side. Keep watching News 9.
the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
Cooking is an act of law. The first act of law we receive from our mothers in the families.
Modern Indian food is all about contemporary and innovative approach to traditional Indian cooking.
Representation it's also important,
I want to wear this white coat every day and then be a chef.
There are stories. If the name of whiskey is Indri, then there is a whole story behind that.
Cooking food is like a therapy, and eating one is like a pleasure I can give it to myself.
With Lounge Nights, I'm on a journey to celebrate and recognize the best food and nightlife establishments in various cities across India.
Radical presents Lounge Nights every Saturday and Sunday only on News9 Live.
Look what happened. Is this crazy? Fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day I will be fighting for you. I believe the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond.
Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Here are the top headlines today. The centre has increased penalties for farmers involved in burning crop stubble, with fines set to rise to a maximum of 30,000 rupees. The amendment is part of the government's push to reduce air pollution under the Commission for Air Quality Management Act. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President-elect Donald Trump have reaffirmed their commitment to further strengthen bilateral ties across a range of sectors, says the MEA. In a telephone conversation, PM Modi congratulated Trump on his re-election as well as the Republican Party's success in the elections. Joint Parliamentary Committee Chair Jagdambika Pal has said that farmers in Karnataka have reached out to him and alleged that Waqf board members are staking claims over their land. Even after the Karnataka government's announcement that farmers would not be evicted, Pal said mutations had already been done in the land records. The Jammu and Kashmir Assembly witnessed stormy scenes today with some members engaging in fistfights. The ruckus broke out after Khurshid Ahmed Sheikh, brother of jailed Baramulla Lok Sabha MP engineer Rashid, displayed a banner to restore Article 370. With just days left for his retirement, Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud has scrapped summer breaks in the Supreme Court.